In previous workshops, I have spoken with you about the function of feelings. To learn more in depth about those four main functions from protection and bonding, communication, and response, thank you, amygdala, for being there when we really need you in times of, well, if we really need to escape a really life-threatening situation. Check out those workshops over at the Homeschool Quest or over at the Homeschool Counseling Network. Hi, I'm Kimberly Bennett, a licensed professional counselor for over 20 years and a homeschooling mom for 5 of those years. I am also the founder and CEO of the Homeschool Counseling Network and it's only homeschooling.com, two advocacy and resource websites that are free to give resources and support to homeschooling families. The Homeschool Counseling Network was especially founded to bridge the gap between professionals and providers in the areas of education, testing, tutoring, coaching, mental health, and all other sorts of support services like occupational therapists and physical therapists and speech therapists. But these are professionals who are equipped and who are familiar with the needs of the homeschooling community. Okay, so in our last video, we talked about the situation, thought, feeling, behavior, connection. I shared with you one of my absolute favorite quotes by psychiatrist, a big author and giant in psychiatry and psychology, Dr. Viktor Frankl, which that quote was, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, we have the power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom." We expanded on that quote just a little bit in our previous video, but we're going to expand on it a little bit more today in this workshop. Feelings can feel automatic. In reality, there is a tiny space in the moments between experiencing a feeling, processing that feeling, and then attaching that feeling to a thought, and then acting on that feeling. When we get to that part of behavior where we talk about acting on that feeling, we actually have a choice between two things. We can allow ourselves to react, which happens automatically or instinctually, pretty much where we allow the amygdala to take over and say, "Oh my goodness, there's a saber-toothed tiger in the room," when it's really nothing more than a math test. And we allow a natural, healthy part of anxiety, which is a part of everyday life, to become fear. There really is a difference between those two. Anxiety has a purpose when it is managed. It keeps us safe and it keeps us protected, something we learned in the first video about the function of feelings. But when we allow the anxiety to grow to the point of where it manifests to fear, then we have a little bit more of a situation. In reality, a math test actually can not hurt us. But the only thing that knows the difference is our mind. Viktor Frankl wrote a lot about the importance of mindset. So we're going to talk a little bit how to use this lesson from Viktor Frankl in helping us manage big feelings. We call it the power of the pause. Just like anything that we want to do well, learning how to take advantage of those brief spaces between experiencing feelings and then in turn acting on those feelings takes practice. If you want to learn how to be a great athlete at playing soccer, you're going to have to get out there and practice. If you want to learn how to manage your feelings, you're going to have to learn to practice. And you're actually going to need to practice these skills during the times when you're already calm, when you don't need them, so that you can get them into muscle memory, if you will. It's just like riding a bike, so that you can recall them for the times when you do need them. Before we can practice, though, we need awareness. We talked about the awareness in the previous video of self-awareness of our situations, of our thoughts, of our feelings, and our behaviors. We also need knowledge of the difference between reactions and responses. So to begin with, let's go back to the earlier where we talked about our brains being control centers. Remember the amygdala? Back here, that almond-shaped cluster of cells that's, I'm going to call him like the driver of the bus, really, of our brain, that kind of tells us, okay, here's the situation. Now here's what we're going to do in this situation. Reactions are often viewed as being automatic. And in reality, some are. And we can be thankful that they are, because they ensure our survival. Remember the first video where we talked about the importance of the role that the amygdala plays in keeping us safe? thank you, amygdala, for doing your job. But while some of those may appear instantaneous, many do not. In truth, there is that brief period between experience of feeling and choosing, yes, choosing how to act on that feeling. Through these choices, we seize control of that command center. In other words, we take that crazy driver out of that movie for speed that we don't need to be in that death-defying situation, and we put a responsible bus driver in the seat of our driver's seat, if you will, to drive our bus and help us kind of, choose a more scenic route, a more country drive on a Sunday afternoon, as opposed to midtown traffic at 5 o'clock on a Friday, which no one wants to be in. It's much less stressful that way. So through conscious awareness and guidance and a little practice, we can learn to gauge our feelings, to examine our thoughts that we attach to these feelings, or even the feelings that we attach to the thoughts, because sometimes the feeling can come first and sometimes the thought can come first. And then after we get used to identifying these automatic thoughts and recognizing, like the previous example I used in earlier videos of how math elicits this response for me, which was not a good experience for me growing up. So when I have to teach math, I immediately get nervous. And I've had to identify over the years my automatic thought of, oh, this is terrible. I'm going to be awful at this. I should not be homeschooling my child. And go, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to change the channel. I'm going to change that thought. Yeah, I can do this because I'm not doing it alone. I don't have to feel afraid. I don't have to feel worried. I don't have to feel nervous. And then allow myself to act on these feelings, which is I'm going to get frustrated. And for me, I don't like feeling afraid. So my fear comes out as anger. That's the mask that I wear and that I show when I'm afraid. It's not uncommon. A lot of people will show all different types of feelings as the mask that they put on for fear, because it's safer to show anger, or it's safer to show humor, or it's safer to show anything else other than fear. Because in order to show fear, it requires us to be vulnerable. But if I can put myself in touch where I start to identify the thought that's behind it, oh, okay, math is scary. Math is not scary. It's not a saber-toothed tiger. And I feel afraid. Well, I don't have to feel afraid. Math is not actually going to bite me. And I can surround myself with people who know more than I do, which is how I have successfully taught math thus far as a homeschool mom. Now I can choose to breathe first and then respond. My 5 rule: breathe in, hold, breathe out. For 5, I'm calm. I don't feel that fear anymore, like those clouds passing by that we talked about in the previous video. Now I can choose how I'm going to behave. Okay, kiddo, I don't really remember this type of pre-algebra, but you know what? YouTube does, and we're going to go find the answer to this. See, completely different situation. The main difference is how I chose to handle it. And because I was allowing myself to choose how I wanted to handle it, and I empowered myself through saying, hey, I don't have to have this negative outcome if I don't want to, the situation went much better. Now we're going to move on to the power of the pause, and we're going to talk about the difference between reacting and responding. So, what is reacting? Well, it's instant and instinctive. It's that fight or flight or freeze or faint. There's actually 4 responses that it's involved, or reactions that are involved to it. That happens when our amygdala hijacks over our brain, and that's who's driving our bus. And it is also when our emotional brain is in control. It doesn't matter who you are, male or female, young or old, making a decision from a position of emotion is usually not going to be your best decision. Now, that is reacting. It's also reflexive. I call it like the knee jerk, literally. It's reflexive, it's instinctive, it has its purpose, but it certainly doesn't need to be applicable to across the board for all situations. You want it to be there so that you don't go play in traffic, but you don't want it to be there when it's time to teach math. Now, responding. This is where all the power is. Responding is cautious and considered. It takes into account consequences and outcome. It also comes from a place of control. where you take control of your breathing. Remember, we talked about how you can control your heart rate and your respiratory rate just from the 5 breathing rule. It allows you to slow down your heart rate, slow down your respiratory rate. What you do with the body, the mind will follow. So once the body starts to get calm, it's a lot easier for the mind to get calm. And then the emotional brain can go, oh, okay, I'm not needed here. We're not actually playing in traffic. We're not actually running from a saber-toothed tiger. My rational thinking brain can kick back in. That is the difference between reacting versus responding. It allows you to see there are options here and there are choices here. If I choose A, this is the outcome I get. If I choose B, this is the outcome I get. If I choose C, this is the outcome I get. So how do you use the power of the pause? Well, you start by remembering your place. I love acronyms. I don't know if it's because I'm married to an engineer and where he works in his job, everything is in an acronym. But you start by remembering how you learn how to respond is by remembering your place. You pause when you feel emotions starting to shift. And you'll know when your emotions are starting to shift. You will almost feel it somatically or instinctively within your body. So for me, some of the somatics or the internal feelings that I experience when I start to feel big feelings start to creep up, my face will get hot. My breathing will increase. My heart rate will increase. Depending on how upset I am, cut me off in traffic, it will, I just really don't like traffic. You can literally almost feel the heart rate thundering in your ears, kind of like, or my heartbeat will start to feel like horses' hooves on a cobblestone road. Cluck, 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 cluck. Other things will be, or you can hear almost the blood roaring in your ears. Not necessarily if you get that angry, but you can shift when you can sense when you're feeling powerful emotions. Sometimes people feel sweaty palms, sometimes their feet will feel cold or their hands will feel cold because what's happening is your body is pulling all of that circulation away from your extremities and moving it towards your heart because, well, that is what is needed for you to flee from saber-toothed tiger. It's putting all of your blood flow where it's needed so that you can survive and flee if you need it to. So what we want to do is reverse that process. When you start feeling whatever it is, learn how to first self-awareness, identify those shifts when you feel yourself, the shift in your emotions. What does it feel like in your body when you start to sense that shift? So next, then the L for your place, you're going to label the feeling. Naming what you were feeling helps you process your feeling more accurately. I showed you in a previous video how I keep this pillow around. There's at my website, homeschoolcounselingnetwork.com, I've also got feeling posters up so that you can see examples of, I use these as adults, I use these with kids, I've used these with teens, but it's important for you to learn how to have the vocabulary to properly label what it is you're feeling. You can go, oh, wait a minute, I know what that is. I've seen that. Like I've said, when I'm fearful, I may put on my mask of anger, but what's really underneath that mask is fear because I don't like being afraid. And I think I'm going to scare that fear right away. It doesn't work. But I'm learning to do better with it. I'm learning to go, oh, wait a minute. I know I don't like this. I'm trying to beat the fear away. Well, that's not working. Oh, let me go to my next thing. Let me ask myself, that's the A, why am I about to react this way? It's just math. It's not a saber-toothed tiger. Yeah, my math experience, and I'm a public school kid. I'm not beating up public school. My public school math experience was horrible. So yeah, it didn't go very well. I didn't really learn math well until I met my husband in high school or when my older brother would come home from college and help me. That's about the best I got. So I kind of remember that as being a negative experience, and the experiences we have in childhood stay with us. So it was kind of ingrained in me. And I have to remind myself, okay, I'm not that little girl in math class anymore with, I'm not going to name that teacher, bless her sweetheart, because I know she's with the Lord now, but still I'm not going to name her because she didn't know any better, to be honest. So, but I'm not that little girl in the classroom who didn't know how to handle math. I'm an adult now. I have resources. I can handle this. So now C, I'm going to choose a mindful response that's going to give me the outcome I seek. I don't want my son to fear math the way I do. In fact, he doesn't, thank heavens. He blissfully has my husband's skills for math. So if he doesn't understand something right away, he does tend to want to be a little fearful of it, but he catches on pretty quickly. And I have to remember he's watching everything that I do. And kids pay more attention to what you do than to what you say. So this has taught me as a parent and as a therapist, as a mom, I have to remember to do my 5 rule and do my breathing for me, because I'm showing him how to handle challenges as they come, whenever they come. The last thing is the E, empowerment. On the days when I forget and I go back to that little girl in math class who didn't do very well, and I react with anger at math, because who shouldn't be angry at math? Um, it doesn't go as well. And those are the days when I doubt homeschooling and I doubt myself, and it's just awful and I want a do over. So, you know what I do? I give myself a mulligan, I give myself a do over. And I say, hey, kiddo, let's take a break. Let me do this again. Let mommy try again. Okay. And then I take some deep breaths and I remind myself I'm safe. I'm okay. It's just math. It's not going to hurt me. And if I don't have the answer's out there somewhere. That's the beauty about homeschooling. We are a community and we are here to support one another. And I'm going to find somebody who's going to help me find that answer. When I do that, I get to the E of this. I am empowered, because now I know that math doesn't have to scare me anymore. I can choose how I want to respond. I'm Kimberly Bennett, founder and CEO of the Homeschool Counseling Network.com. Thanks so much for watching.